when his boss proposed at a glitzy party. I took 207 million and left him my shocking decision. The chandeliers hung like gleaming icebergs over the crowd, all glitz and glamour, but beneath the sparkling surface lay a roiling sea of secrets. The annual charity gala, held in the heart of the city, was more than just an occasion. It was a playground for the powerful, a place where fortunes were flaunted and whispered deals were struck in the dark corners. Laura felt a shiver crawl up her spine as she sipped her champagne, the bubbles exploding like tiny fireworks against her senses. She understood her role well. It was to stand beside her boss, the charismatic and enigmatic Marco, who was known for his charm and sharp intellect. But tonight, he was about to unveil a shocking twist that would change everything. As Marco took the stage, he sparkled in his tailored suit, eyes glinting under the soft light. His voice, deep and hypnotic, silenced the room. Tonight, we celebrate not just the generosity of spirit. He paused, glancing toward Laura, who felt a tingle of unease race through her body. There was something electric in the air, the anticipation swelling to a palpable tension, but also personal commitments. With that, he knelt down, gleaming ring in hand, and everyone's breath caught in their throat. A collective gasp swept through the crowd like a gust of wind. Was he really proposing? Right here? Right now? Laura, will you marry me? The question echoed like a thunderclap. Shock rippled across faces, and Laura's heart dropped into her stomach. She was not prepared for this. The shimmering diamond, the audience captivated, their eyes wide with disbelief. The murmurs rose. People exchanged whispers that felt like daggers. But they've only been dating for a few months. One voice cut through the noise. Is this a stunt to add to his portfolio? Another chimed in. As she stood frozen, a myriad of thoughts raced through Laura's mind. How could she respond? Should she laugh, feign delight, or are those the real emotions bubbling under the surface? But just as her mind spun, something else tugged at her, a staggering realization. The contract sat in her purse, the one promising her a staggering 207 million if she played her cards right. It was a life-changing amount, one she had never dreamed possible. And yet here was Marco, ready to change everything with just 3 words. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The room seemed to close in on her as Marco stared, his expression shifting from excitement to confusion, desperation flickering in his eyes. Laura's hands trembled at her sides, her mind racing. A million questions crashed over her like a tidal wave. What would it mean to say yes? What would her life become? And was she truly ready to play this game? With the weight of those decisions hanging heavy in the air, Laura felt the entire world shift. The chandeliers sparkled above, but shadows loomed larger around her. She had to choose. Then, with a heart thundering in her chest, she leaned closer to Marco, locking eyes. What would she say? What move would she make as the crowd held its breath, waiting for her to shatter the silence? The silence was deafening, time stretching like taffy as she stood there, paralyzed by the weight of Marco's question. Every heartbeat seemed to echo in the grand hall. In that fleeting moment, she glimpsed her future lighting up like a neon sign, the dizzying heights of wealth, power, and sophistication, but also the shackles of a life crafted by someone else's design. Laura? Marco's voice broke through her thoughts, tinged now with urgency. The crowd leaned in, their eyes boring into her, hungry for drama. She could feel the weight of judgment and anticipation flooding the air, threading through every bespoke suit and elegant gown. Their unspoken questions screamed louder than any words could. Hadn't Laura always prided herself on her independence? Wasn't her rise had been suffused with grit and ambition? Yet here she was, on the brink of being swallowed whole by this unexpected proposal. In a split second, the once exciting promise of potential morphing into something that felt confining, dangerous. The ring caught the light, shimmering and taunting. Was this a gesture of love, or a gilded cage. The contract whispered from her purse like a siren, reminding her of its transformative power. But could she really exchange it all for just one impulsive yes? Her voice cracked slightly, the single word hanging suspended in the charged atmosphere. She felt Marco's gaze piercing through her, a mix of hope and desperation. Was this love or a strategy to elevate his public persona? Ghosts of past relationships surged through her, each a reminder of how easily romance could shift into manipulation. With a pang of resolve, she felt something surge from inside. The life that was calling to her now clashed with the void she felt when envisioning a future with Marco. Rather than veering towards conformity, she believed enough in herself to step away from both the diamond and the contract. "I can't," the words slipped out, trembling but firm. Gasps rippled through the crowd, the hunger for scandal and gossip glistening in their eyes. Marco's face paled, confusion morphing into indignation. "What do you mean you can't?" "No." The single syllable escaped her lips with heat, igniting the room. "This isn't how I want my life to go." With that declaration hanging in the air, a rush of adrenaline shot through her. She turned her back on Marco, whose stunned expression seemed frozen in time. The strains of the gala continued playing, muffled against her racing heart. This moment felt like a suspension between possibility and the unknown. She took a few steps toward the exit, the weight of all those eyes trailing her, but a curious sensation erupted within. She was walking away not just from Marco, but from fear of the known path that others expected her to follow. Yet, as she slipped through the grand doors of the gala, an unsettling thought gnawed at her. Aside from the shock and chaos she'd just unleashed, did she truly grasp the magnitude of her decision? Turning back was not an option now. She could sense Marco closing in behind her, urgency in his strides. "Laura." His voice cut through the buzzing night. "You don't understand what you're walking away from." What had she done? Was her gamble calculated, or had she just dashed away her safety net? The crisp night air hit her like a slap. She wasn't just leaving a man behind. She had left a life of comfort and the glimmering allure of wealth. Behind her lay the remnants of a path paved with prestige and power, now burning in her wake. But suddenly, a voice inside whispered if she didn't step into the light, how would she uncover who she truly was? And just as she began to think she might have escaped the chaos, a figure emerged from the shadows, watching her closely, eyes glimmering with a knowing smile. It sent a jolt of realization through her. Was there someone else lurking behind the proposal, a hidden player in this game? The question loomed large, pulling her into a web of intrigue and uncertainty. Who had been pulling the strings all along? Would this evening lead her to unearth dark secrets buried beneath the glittering facade of the gala? What was waiting just beyond the edge of her decision? Cold air wrapped around Laura as she stepped into the night, her heart hammering against her ribcage. The clicking of heels echoed on the marble path behind her. Marco was gaining. Was it shame, anger, or desperation that fueled his steps? She dared not look back. The figure at the edge of the light was still there, leaning casually against a lamppost. The silhouette was vaguely familiar, yet veiled in mystery. Her mind raced. Had Marco set this encounter up, too? "Hey, hold on." Marco's voice cut through the darkness, snapping Laura back to urgency. Panic bubbled inside her stomach. She couldn't stand still, couldn't let him corner her as he'd always had. "Who are you?" She suddenly called out to the shadowy figure, panic edging her voice. The night felt electric, charged with something she couldn't quite name. "Laura, wait." Marco's tone shifted as if he sensed her turmoil. "There's someone here," she shouted, the words spilling out as her chest tightened. The figure stepped closer, revealing features that sent a wave of recognition crashing over her like a rogue wave. Eddie? Her breath caught. Eddie was her childhood friend, the type who had always understood her restless spirit. How had he appeared now, of all moments, when she felt on the verge of a cliff? "Laura, you need to listen," he insisted, urgency slicing through the air between them. "It's not just about the proposal. You're in deeper than you know." Marco's face shifted from indignation to bewilderment, caught in the crossfire of their shared history. "What does he mean?" Marco barked, his voice a low growl. She turned her full attention back to Eddie. He was earnest, his eyes locked on her with a gravity that grounded her swirling thoughts. There's more to this, more at stake than you can possibly imagine. What do you know? Laura pressed, her heartbeat racing with a mix of fear and adrenaline. Your father, the new investments, he drawn the attention of some dangerous people. She felt the world tilt on its axis. Her father had been secretive about his ventures lately. Whispers of underhand dealings always just beyond her reach. What are you saying? I don't understand. It's all connected, Laura. The proposal, the contract, even why Marco is here. They want control over you, not just your family's money. The words ricocheted through her mind like bullets. Control. That word hung heavy in the air, wrapping around her thoughts like a noose. Had her life been some twisted game all along? Stop. Marco surged forward, frustration bubbling. What does he know? You're just trying to scare her. Am I? Eddie didn't even flinch. You're barking up the wrong tree, Marco. This is bigger than both of you. Laura's breath caught again. What choice loomed before her now? There was no going back to the life she had just abandoned, yet venturing forward seemed incredibly dangerous. A sudden thought sparked and ignited her fear. Eddie, are you in danger too? His presence was a flickering flame in the darkness, and she wondered how far the shadows stretched. Marco flinched, as if the weight of a grim truth had settled upon him. Laura, please just come with me. We can talk about this talk? She echoed, her voice rising in pitch. What's left to discuss? I'm not some prize to possess or a pawn to be played. Then trust me, Eddie urged, his intensity unwavering. You've opened a door that can't be closed. It's all a game they're playing, and you're the centerpiece. The tension crackled like static in the air, a standoff under the street lamp's glow. Laura's mind spun, thoughts colliding like storm clouds. Trust one, trust none. What path would lead her to safety? Laura, Marco said slowly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I won't let you go down this path. Please, you need to listen to me. The night swirled around her, and she felt the eyes of the city upon them, crowding her with a pressure she couldn't escape. There was nowhere to run without making a choice, an irrevocable decision that could alter everything. But as she stood there, teetering on the edge of her fate, the question loomed, larger than ever. Could she trust Eddie? Or was Marco right that leaving with Eddie would drag her deeper into danger? As her gaze darted between both men, a sudden rustle from the shadows caught her attention, stealing her breath. What now lurked just beyond the edge of their anxious standoff? Laura's heart dropped as the rustling grew louder, each sound amplifying the dread in her chest. The shadows seemed to deepen around them, swallowing the moonlight. Stay back, she shouted instinctively, her voice cutting through the tension. Eddie took a step forward, but she raised her hand, halting him as she focused on the dark expanse where the noise had come from. Marco's brows furrowed, his bravado wavering, dissipating into a haze of uncertainty. Laura, we need to get out of here, he said, glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting danger to leap from the darkness at any moment. But Eddie remained calm, studying the murky fringe where the night blended into something sinister. Whatever it is, it won't hesitate. We have to keep moving, he urged, his eyes darting back to Laura, imploring her to make a decision. Laura felt torn in two, fighting against the rising tide of fear, the instinct to flee warping into something almost addictive, the thrill of facing the unknown. Dare she unmask whatever lurked there, or was fleeing the safer choice? Suddenly, a figure broke free from the shadows. A tall man stepped into the dim illumination, hands tucked casually in his pockets, his face shrouded by the shadow of a dark cap. His presence felt off, a predator among prey, sending ripples of unease through her. Looking for something? The stranger drawled, a smirk creeping across his lips, revealing perfect white teeth that seemed far too polished for this moment. A chill slid down Laura's spine. Eddie, who is that? She whispered, dread coiling in her stomach. Eddie's expression morphed into one of fury, like an old wound reopening. Graham, he spat, the name slipping out like a venomous snake. He's the one I warned you about. Marco shifted closer to Laura, positioning himself as a shield. What does he want? I want what's mine, Graham replied, his gaze boring into Laura. And you're standing in the way. Either move, or you'll regret it. Her breath hitched again, the weight of the confrontation pressing down on her. Was she truly in the crosshairs of something so large, so dangerous? She could feel the pulse of the city, alive and mocking, the the stars above bearing witness to her plight. "Eddie, what should we do?" she asked, panic bubbling to the surface. The realization hit her that this was no longer just about her father's business, about proposals or broken relationships. This was life and death, and she was caught in the middle of a storm. "Stand back," Eddie shouted, stepping in front of her, his stance shifting from protective friend to fierce defender. "You don't want this fight. Walk away. It's not worth it." Graham laughed, the sound echoing eerily in the stillness. "You think they care about your little threats? You've already crossed lines you never knew existed." Laura's mind raced. For every word exchanged, the stakes grew higher. The thought of her father's secrets, of Eddie's warnings, everything felt like a chain tightening around her throat. Choices flashed before her like lightning: stay and fight, or run and risk everything unspooling further. Suddenly, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up as an unmistakable scent wafted through the air: smoke. In the next heartbeat, she turned and saw a flicker from behind Graham, flames licking at the edges of the alleyway they had rushed into. A fire had started, spreading like a whispering curse through the night. "Eddie!" Laura shouted, panic surging. "We have to get out of here. Now!" Eddie yelled, grabbing her wrist, but not before she glanced back at Marco. His eyes were wide, panic mingled with anger. She wasn't just running from danger. She was running from everything she thought she knew. But before they could bolt, Graham lunged forward, reaching for Laura. She stumbled backward, adrenaline kicking in, heart racing faster than her feet could carry her. "Don't let him touch you," Marco bellowed. But it was all a blur, chaos collapsing around them. With one last desperate glance, she turned and ran with Eddie, the night exploding into chaos behind them. As they sprinted down the path, the question twisted in her mind. Had they truly escaped danger, or was it merely the calm before a far worse storm? What would happen next? The answer lay somewhere in the shadows, and as the flames crackled behind her, she had a sinking feeling they were far from the end of this nightmare. The acrid smell of smoke followed them like a ghost, wrapping around Laura and Eddie as they sprinted through the twisting alleyways. Heart pounding, she could feel the heat from the flames behind them, a sinister reminder that safety was a fleeting illusion. "Where do we go?" Laura gasped, glancing at Eddie, who seemed to know the streets better than she did. His grip on her wrist was firm, guiding her through the shadows as they dodged debris and flickering lights. "Just keep moving," he urged, determination etched across his face. They passed abandoned buildings, their windows shattered like teeth, illuminated sporadically by the flickering glow of nearby street lamps. With every step, Laura's panic transformed into a steely resolve. Running felt both liberating and terrifying, a dance with the unknown. "Did you see him?" Laura asked, trying to keep pace with Eddie. "What does he want from us?" Eddie's jaw clenched, his eyes darting left and right. "He has got a stake in this. Graham wants to leverage your father's business to take control of what's mine. I thought I could protect you, but you didn't know he would come after us like this." She felt her voice rise, frustration mixing with fear. "We should have just left when we had the chance." "No," Eddie replied, his tone heavy with urgency. "You don't understand. Leaving wasn't an option. He's not just some petty criminal. He's backed by powerful people, Laura. If he gets to you," Eddie's voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. "You mean they'll come after my family?" She halted, dread filling her chest. Images of her father flooded her mind, his warm smile, the way he looked at her as if she was the only one that mattered. "Listen to me," Eddie said, pulling her back to the moment. "Right now, we need to find a safe place. We can't outpace Graham forever." Suddenly, a low growl reverberated down the alley, a motorcycle's engine revved to life, its roguish roar slicing through the night. Out of the shadows, a figure emerged, helmet-clad and menacing. A bike like a demon's steed, metallic and gleaming, filled the passage with its formidable presence. Laura's heart raced as she exchanged a frantic look with Eddie. "What now? Get down," he yelled, and they ducked behind a rusty dumpster. The motorcycle roared past them, tires screeching, barely missing the edge of the dumpster. The rider's silhouette was eerily familiar. "Marco," Laura shouted, anxiety ripping through her. But her voice was swallowed by the distant sounds of sirens, the chaos unfolding in every direction, a cacophony that resonated with her fear. He had come back for them. With a sudden screech, the motorcycle skidded to a halt. Marco leaped off, eyes wild with adrenaline. Get on. I know a place. Eddie hesitated. Are you insane? He could have led Graham right to us. Marco shook his head, urgency breaking through his panic. I'm not giving up on you. Get on. Laura's mind raced. Could they trust him? But before she could answer, a distant shout rang out. Graham's voice lifted above the chaos, sharp and serrated, hunting them like prey. Laura, Eddie, you can't hide forever. Time shrank to a single heartbeat, the world closing in. Eddie weighed his options, glanced at Marco, and made a split-second decision. Get on. As they scrambled onto the bike, the engine roared back to life. Laura held tightly, fear coursing through her veins. They sped off, darkness wrapping them in a fleeting embrace. But behind them, the fire continued to burn, a harbinger of the chaos that still awaited. Turning sharply at a corner, Laura looked back, her breath catching in her throat. Graham was on their tail, his figure growing larger as the flames blazed behind him. The chase was on, but this time, it wasn't just about her father's secrets. This was about survival. As they raced through the labyrinth of the city, an ominous thought settled in her mind. What if this was just the beginning? The wind screamed around them, carrying unanswered questions. Would they make it before the flames consumed them whole, or was the darkness already plotting their demise? The roar of the motorcycle cut through the darkness as they hurtled down narrow streets. Laura squeezed Eddie's waist, her fingers clenched tight around his jacket. The wind whipped her hair back, but it couldn't drown out the panic pounding in her chest. Faster, Marco! Eddie yelled, glancing behind them. The shadows danced ominously, twisting in the flickering light, and the echoes of Graham's threats loomed large. Marco leaned into the turn, the bike's tires gripping the pavement hard. I'm giving it all I've got. Just hang on. His voice was steady, but the wild glint in his eyes betrayed his fear. Laura couldn't shake the feeling that they traded one danger for another. Marco had come for them. Yes, but at what cost? Graham was relentless, his shadows were everywhere, lurking, waiting. She wanted to scream, to question Marco's loyalty, but instead, she bit her lip and pushed those thoughts deep down. They flew past dimly lit storefronts, their neon signs flickering like fragile stars. The city felt alive, yet increasingly hostile. The sound of the motorcycle faded into the background, swallowed by an unsettling silence that seemed to consume everything else. Where are we going? Laura shouted over the rush of wind. There's an old warehouse, Marco replied, urgency fueling his every move. We can hide there until I figure out the next step. It's off the radar. Graham doesn't know about it. But what if he finds us? Eddie's voice was low, filled with an anxiety that mirrored Laura's own. He won. I know it like the back of my hand. Just trust me. Laura's heartbeat synced with the bike's roar, a pounding rhythm echoing her growing dread. Trust. It felt like a fragile thread she was being asked to cling to in an unwelcome storm. Then, suddenly, the motorcycle jolted. A jarring thud erupted beneath them as Marco swerved to dodge an unseen obstacle. Laura's stomach dropped, and she tightened her grip. Hold on, Marco shouted, reeling the bike back in control. The world around her spun momentarily, and what should have been an exhilarating ride turned into a desperate flight. Ahead, the warehouse loomed into view, a hulking, dark silhouette against the moonlit sky, the iron door barely hanging on its rusty hinges. Marco raced towards it, the engine screaming in protest as they approached. He skidded to a stop, and they jumped off the bike. The familiar acrid smell of oil mixed with the dampness of the night. In an instant, Marco was moving, pulling open the door and beckoning them inside. Get in, quick. He glanced around, scanning for signs of danger. The adrenaline coursing through Laura almost clouded her judgment, but something in Marco's voice gave her pause. They stepped into the warehouse, an eerie cavern of shadows and lost memories. Dim rays of light filtered through cracked windows, illuminating dust motes suspended in the air like lost dreams. Eddie followed closely, a protective instinct flaring up as he moved in close. What now? Laura whispered, scanning the darkness for any sign of threat. The stillness pressed against her, heavy and foreboding. Marco's breath came fast as he lowered his voice. We wait. I need to contact someone who can help us. But if Graham finds us here, then what? Eddie pressed, urgency lined in his voice. Then we fight back, Marco declared, determination shining through the fear. Laura's heart thundered. The thought of confrontation twisted her stomach into knots. What had they gotten themselves into? Would they really stand against someone as dangerous as Graham? The silence grew heavier, each passing second taut with anticipation. They huddled close, hearts racing, waiting for the next shoe to drop. The shadows danced around them, and the rising cadence of approaching footsteps echoed ominously in the distance. What if we can't hide? Laura wondered aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Marco turned, his expression fierce. We have to believe we need to survive. It's now or never. As the footsteps drew closer, Laura felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Would they make it through? Or would darkness swallow them whole? In that instant, everything felt like it was about to unravel. Then the door creaked. Someone was there, and not just anyone. The voice that followed sent chills racing down her spine. Laura, I know you're in there. The unmistakable voice of Graham echoed ominously through the warehouse, filling the air with dread. What would come next? Laura's breath caught in her throat. Graham's voice slid through the shadows like a knife, sharp and unforgiving. Panic clawed at her insides, and she glanced at Marco, his face a mask of concentration mixed with fear. What do we do? Eddie hissed, stepping closer to Laura, his protective demeanor crackling in the charged air. Marco strained to listen, his eyes darting toward the door. We stay quiet. If he thinks we're not here, the footsteps drew near, deliberate and heavy. Each thud sent ripples of dread through Laura's body. She could almost feel the darkness coiling around them, tightening. Laura, I know you're in there, Graham called again, his voice smooth but tainted with an undercurrent of menace. You can't hide from me forever. Is he serious? Eddie breathed, each word laced with disbelief. He thinks he can just waltz in and demand show. Marco interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. We have to be ready if he does break in. It could get violent. Tension spiraled, filling the warehouse as they exchanged glances. There was no escape. It felt like a game of cat and mouse, and they were the cornered prey. Laura's heart pounded like a war drum as Graham's silhouette flickered in the dim light spilling through the cracked windows, teasing her with the thought of discovery. Look, Marco said, pointing to a pile of debris against the wall. We can use that to block the door if he comes in. We need to create a barrier. He moved quickly, grabbing the closest items: a rusted table, some crates, and old metal sheets. Eddie helped, his jaw clenched tight. Laura's fingers shook as she reached for a metal bar, hoisting it to add to the makeshift barricade. Her mind raced. What would Graham do if he got in? She thought back to all the nights filled with his rage and threats, how he twisted words like a puppeteer. No, she wouldn't let that happen again. Not now. Time to make a decision. Laura, Graham's voice came again, a sickly sweet taunt that turned her stomach. You can come out and talk, or I can come in and I promise you, that won't be pretty. The tension snapped like a rubber band, coiling tighter and tighter, threatening to unravel. Laura swallowed hard, the lump in her throat nearly choking her. Could they trust Marco? Was this the moment they'd been preparing for, or a trap laid perfectly by Graham himself? Laura, Eddie's voice cut through her thoughts, urgent. What do we do? We need a plan. He's going to force his way in. Marco paused, his expression shifting from battle-ready to contemplative. If he comes in, we can't let him take you. He'll hurt you. I won't let that happen again. The weight of those words hung between them. Her mind flashed to the many ways Graham had used his power, the ways he twisted his relationships to his advantage. But something in Marco's eyes sparked a flicker of hope. Would it be enough to fight him back? Another loud thud echoed as Graham tested the door, pressing his weight against it. Dust fell from the rafters, clouding the air. Are we really going to play this game? I thought we were adults here. Get ready, Marco commanded, gripping the scrap metal tightly. Laura nodded, her heart pounding like thunder in her ears. This was it. The moment they waited for, the moment she would either surrender to the shadows or confront the monster that had wreaked havoc on her life. The door shuddered violently, the rusty hinges screaming as they gave way to Graham's relentless pressure. And then it happened. The door burst open, splintering apart, revealing the dark figure of Graham standing in the frame with a triumphant smirk plastered on his face. Laura, he intoned slowly, his gaze sweeping over the trio, assessing and calculating. Did you really think you could hide from me? As he stepped into the warehouse, the air became thick with anticipation. The fight was about to begin. Would they withstand the storm? Or would they crumble under the weight of his malice? Laura's heart raced, truth clashing with desperation. She gripped the metal bar tighter. Let us find out, she whispered, steeling herself for the confrontation ahead. With the shadows closing in, uncertainty hung over them. The battle for their lives was far from over. This was just the beginning. What would happen when the dust settled? The air crackled with tension as Graham stepped inside, his eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. Laura's fingertips felt numb around the metal bar, its cold surface a stark contrast to the heat radiating from her fear. She could feel Eddie's presence, solid and reassuring beside her, while Marco's face was a shifting tableau of determination and dread. What's it gonna be? Graham taunted, his voice like ice. He took a leisurely step forward, clearly enjoying the moment. You think I'm here to chat? No, sweetheart. I came for a reunion. No, she managed, her voice shaking but defiant. You're not going to hurt me again. He chuckled, a dark sound that filled the space between them with dread. Oh, you still don't get it. This isn't just about you. He pointed a finger at Marco and Eddie, his gaze sharpening. They're part of the equation too. Release me, or I promise you shut up. Eddie shouted, stepping forward. The boldness, fueled by desperation, flickered off him. You think you can threaten us? You think you can just waltz in here and take what you want? Graham's smile widened, revealing too many teeth. I know exactly what I'm capable of. You three can dance around the issue, but I'll make this easy. He pulled something from his jacket, something metallic that gleamed in the dim light. I don't want to hurt anyone, unless you force my hand. Laura's blood ran cold. The gun in his grip gleamed ominously, a deadly halo in his hands. She squeezed the bar tighter, feeling the jagged edge digging into her palm, mixing pain with fear. They were cornered, the walls closing in like a vice. Don't you dare come any closer, Marco warned, stepping protectively in front of Laura. His voice held steady, a boldness that masked terror. But Graham merely laughed, low and mocking. Protective, aren't you? Too bad it won't matter in the end. I'll take Laura, and you two will just be collateral damage. Every word felt like a death sentence. Laura felt the weight of the room shift as dread pooled in her stomach. Marco, think. She whispered urgently, realizing that the time for words was slipping away. We can't let him get to us. We need to stand our ground. Marco interrupted, his jaw set. If he gets any closer, it's us against him. There's no choice. Graham advanced slowly, his eyes narrowing. Look at the three of you. So desperate, so afraid. Just give in. I can show you a way out. His voice turned syrupy sweet. Just trust me. No. Laura exclaimed, the defiance rising unbidden. We won't trust you. You may try to use fear against us, but we won't be your pawns. Graham's face hardened, the facade of charm falling away. Then it'll be a pleasure to draw this out, sweetheart. I hope you're ready for the consequences. In that heartbeat, Eddie surged forward, breaking the tension. Grabbing a piece of debris from the floor, he hurled it at Graham, his instincts screaming to defend. The object struck true, hitting Graham square in the shoulder. A sharp grunt erupted from his lips, and the gun wavered. Run, Marco shouted. He grabbed Laura by the arm, urgency coursing through him as they sprinted back through the shadows of the warehouse. But as they stumbled back, they heard a chilling laugh echoing behind them. You think this is over? This is just the beginning. Laura's eyes met Marco's, questions brewing furiously in her mind. Would they really escape Graham's grasp? The fear that gnawed at her gut was persistent, gnawing, a stark reminder that the stakes had never been higher. Suddenly, the sound of sirens shrieked outside, breaking through the heavy tension. Could it be help? Or was it yet another tool in Graham's twisted game? Get down, Eddie yelled, as they darted behind a large crate. More footsteps echoed. The clock was ticking. What awaited them outside? Safety or the embrace of nightmares yet to come? As they crouched behind the crate, heartbeats pounding fiercely against their chests, Laura felt her mind racing. Could the sirens genuinely signal rescue, or merely draw Graham closer? Panic clawed at her insides, mixing wildly with the adrenaline. Do you see anything? Marco whispered, his breath a quickened whisper against the heavy weight of the moment. Eddie leaned out slightly, eyes darting. No one in sight yet, but the sirens are getting louder. I swear this isn't right. Laura gripped Marco's arm, feeling the warmth of his skin amid the cold dread wrapping around her. Graham's not stupid. He'll use every trick he knows to turn this to his advantage. Footsteps grew louder, echoing off the warehouse walls. They held their breath as shadows danced against the light flooding in from outside. Dread set heavy in Laura's stomach like a stone. She couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Graham was anticipating their every move. Suddenly, a loud crash sounded from another section of the warehouse, the noise resonating with a bone-rattling force. The three of them exchanged glances, terror strangling every ounce of hope. I think that was Marco started, but Graham's voice interrupted, trailing like a sinister wind. You think you can hide from me? He called out, his tone dripping with malevolence. Here's the deal. I'm offering a safe exit. Just stroll out, and I promise not to hurt a hair on any of your heads. Laura cringed at the soft but determined laughter that accompanied his words, able to picture the fierce gleam in his eyes. He's playing with us, she muttered, gripping the bar tighter. Eddie shot her a sideways look. What do? Do we take our chances with him, or wait until help arrives? Help? Graham snickered, breaking through their thoughts again. You really think the sirens are for you? This is just part of my grand performance. Trust me, you don't want to find out what happens if you don't join the show. A gust of wind swept past, carrying with it a haunting chill. Laura knew they had to make a choice and fast, but the dread of the unknown paralyzed her. Laura, what do we do? Marco's voice trembled slightly, revealing the fissure of fear cracking through his bravado. She looked at him, desperation battling against courage. We can't wait for rescue. I want to be a pawn in Graham's game. Eddie nodded. Agreed. We need to move. Suddenly, Graham's laughter echoed again, but this time it felt like the walls had ears, mocking their deliberation. There's no escape for you. Not anymore. In an instant decision spurred by the growing urgency of his words, Laura took a deep breath, rising from behind the crate. Eddie now? They bolted from their shelter just as Graham lunged forward, the gun now pointed squarely at them. But you have one last chance, run back to me. Or before he could finish, a loud explosion echoed from outside, sending shards of the warehouse tumbling down. Dust and debris filled the air, creating chaotic light filtered through grimy openings. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It felt like the skies had opened with a fury and angry warning. Go! Marco yelled as they rushed toward the closest exit, pushing through the chaos, and just as they reached the door, they heard a voice behind them. Where do you think you're going? Graham bellowed, rage dripping from every syllable as he charged forward through the dust. Laura's heart raced with an instinctual need to survive. The air thickened with tension, the remnants of hope fighting against impending despair. Would they make it outside? Or would Graham's wrath claim them before they could reach safety? Just then, a loud crash exploded from the roof, and shadows loomed high above them. Laura turned to Marco, eyes wide. We have to keep going. What awaited them on the other side of that door? More danger, or the beginnings of freedom? The chaos surged as they fled, the remnants of the warehouse crumbling around them like a fragile castle of cards. Dust filled the air, choking and thick, but Laura's heart raced faster than the panic clawing at her throat. Rushing forward, she clung to Marco's hand, her instincts screaming for survival. Eddie was close behind, keeping pace with steady determination, but fear pressed against them, heavy and oppressive. With every step, the shadows of the warehouse loomed larger, and Graham's rage echoed in their minds like a relentless drum. We have to get out, Marco urged, his voice taut with urgency. Every second felt like a countdown, the air electric and alive with the threat looming just behind them. They barreled towards the exit, the lights spilling in like a beacon, but also revealing the rail-thin line between safety and capture. Let us go, Laura shouted, her voice breaking through the tension, and they burst through the door, lungs sucking in the cool night air like fresh life. Outside, chaos reigned. The headlights from emergency vehicles flashed, illuminating the scene in stark contrast against the darkness like the sun had split open the night sky. Graham's laughter followed them, slicing through the din. You can't escape so easily, he shouted, fury fueling his pursuit. Laura's pulse quickened. Survival outweighed questions of loyalty or morality. Over there. Eddie pointed toward a thick cluster of trees along the perimeter of the parking lot, their shadows inviting shelter among the chaos. Marco nodded, leading the way as they sprinted toward the safety of the trees, ducking low, each footfall pounding like a war drum against the asphalt. They reached the tree line and skidded to a halt under the cover of the branches, panting heavily. The sounds of the outside world faded momentarily as their breathing filled the void, and adrenaline surged through Laura like fire. "He is coming," Eddie whispered, peering around the edge of a tree. The headlights of the emergency vehicles flickered, blending with shadows but failing to obscure the approaching threat. "We can't stay here long. We need a plan," Marco said, chest heaving. "If Graham finds us, he'll finish what he started." Laura took a moment to gather her thoughts, feeling the fear that had rattled her cage of control slipping into something more intense, determination, like steel forged in the fires of their shared ordeal. "We need to split up," she said suddenly, the thought crystallizing in her mind. "Create distractions. If we spread out, we can confuse him. He wants to know which way to go." Marco and Eddie exchanged glances, weighing the risk and the potential. "Are you serious?" Eddie shook his head. "That's dangerous. We need to stick together, or we'll be cornered." "Trust me," Laura insisted, the resolve hardening her voice. "It's our best shot. We'll meet back at the diner on 5th. I know how to lose him in the alleyways." Marco's brows knit together, clearly conflicted. "All right, but we need to be quick. No heroics." As the gears shifted in their minds, they scanned the shadows for their path forward, the sounds of sirens fading into the night. Sensing their window, Laura nodded sharply, adrenaline spurring them into action. "Go," she whispered, pushing them forward before her heart could betray her. The trio split. Laura darted into the darkness of the trees, her instincts guiding her back toward familiarity, the alleyways she had navigated countless times before. She felt the solid ground beneath her feet, a grounding force amid the uncertainty swirling around her. The minute she lost sight of Marco and Eddie, a pang of loss struck her. They were in this together, yet each moment apart felt painful, a reminder of the fragile web of trust they had woven in such a short time. But she pressed on, each step sharp with purpose. Racing through the shadows of the alley, she felt alive, merging fear with determination. She ducked behind bins and twisted around corners, glancing back, knowing Graham was dynamically hunting. She could picture him, cold and predatory, driven by something darker than himself, territory claimed in a twisted game of power and threats. Just ahead, she saw a glimmer of light spilling from a cafe window, inviting, warm. It had to be the diner, a safe haven amid the chaos. She looked back one last time toward the approaching shadows before crashing through the door. Inside, the early morning glow wrapped around her like a blanket, comforting yet juxtaposed against the maelstrom outside. "Laura," Marco called out, relief washing over him as their eyes met. Eddie stepped in, his expression also lighting up with hope. "You made it. I told you I would," she exclaimed, a surge of exhilaration coursing through her veins. But the moment was short-lived. The front window rattled ominously, urging them toward the back. "Let us go," Eddie urged, leading them toward the employee exit. As they slipped out the back, the sounds of chaos unfolded behind them, a pursuit that hadn't ceased. Marco turned back to shout, "Stay close." The trio found refuge in the bustle of the streets, slipping through alleys and side streets, the darkness swallowing them whole. They formed a bond, proven through fire and shadow, a lifeline amid the clutches of betrayal. It felt like they were winning, despite the dread lurking in the corners of her mind. Moments later, they reached a safe house Eddie knew of, a hidden gem belonging to an old contact. Laura found herself surrounded by familiarity again, cracked walls telling stories of protection and secrets, echoes of resilience woven into every fiber. "Are you sure we're safe?" Eddie asked, scanning the perimeter as he ensured every door was sealed tight. "For now," Marco replied, his resolve tightening around them. "But we need to think ahead. Graham won't stop searching. What do we do about him?" Laura's voice trembled slightly, but she steeled herself. "We need to turn the tables." And just like that, a plan began to take shape, fueled by their collective defiance against the dark. They were no longer on the run. The fight was coming to them. As dawn broke outside, a new fire ignited within her, the fire to reclaim her life, her choices, and perhaps even the truth lurking beneath the shadows. They would thwart whatever twisted game Graham had twisted too far. There was no turning back now. Together, we're stronger, Laura said, conviction threading through her words as they stood united against the threat of the coming storm. The shadows may have chased them, but they wouldn't run anymore. They'd become warriors in the narrative, determined to reclaim what was taken, a testament to resilience cast against the darkness. Let us finish this, Marco declared, a fierce glimmer igniting in his gaze. And just like that, they stepped forward, 3 souls, bound by fate, ready to confront their demons. Now it wasn't just about survival, this was their moment of truth. Together, they forged ahead into the dawn, defying the intertwining threads of fear and uncertainty. They would emerge victorious or fall fighting. There was no middle ground. The battle may have begun long ago, but this was the beginning of their victory. Each heartbeat pounding like a war drum, they charged toward the fight that awaited them. The whispers of the night had changed, transformed into a war cry that echoed in the corridors of determination. The story would not end here, not with shadows looming, but with their strength surging forward into the light. Laura breathed deep, ready for the final confrontation. The future was theirs to claim, and they were ready to fight for it. And they would fight with everything they had. Now is the moment. If you love this gripping finale, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let the world know you want more epic tales just like this. And don't hesitate to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. We want to hear what you think. Finally, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling end. Don't wait even 1 more second to spread the excitement, because true fans understand how important it is to support the channel.